Hello, thank you for tuning into my channel. We are free motion quilting individual blocks of our Wheels quilt today. So if you want to see how I quilt the inside of these blocks, please stay tuned. I'm still working on my Wheels quilt. I have just 2 more steps to go. Here I hope you can see that part of the quilt is pinned and part of the quilt is not. The part that is pinned, or that still has pins in it, it just means that I haven't quilted those parts yet. And there are still quite a few blocks that I'm working on to get the whole thing quilted. The blocks that do not have pins in them, what I've done is I've used free motion to quilt the inside of the block, to quilt the inner octagon, and then to quilt on the stitch line. So all of the stitch lines of this quilt that accent the wheel, they're going to be quilted. I did the horizontal and vertical lines in another video, and the diamonds, so I will put a link to that video in case you didn't see it, so you can see how I did the first stages of the quilting. You can't see, I used a dark gray thread, so you can't even see the quilting in the ditch on the front side of the quilt or on the top of the quilt. So I'm going to flip it over a little bit, fold it, so that we can look at what the actual quilting looks like. Even though I used that gray thread, it won't show up on the top of the quilt, but it is, hopefully you can see that on the back of the quilt. Alright, and so if we just take a look at one block, these are the parts that I did before, the outlines of the block. And then the inner part of the block, that's what we're going to be doing today in free motion. So let's go to the sewing machine and I will show you how. I want to give you like a little bit of basic mechanics of how I'm doing this. I have started in the middle of the quilt with my quilting because of the bulk that's going to be going under the machine. And so I wanted to deal with the most bulky parts of the quilt first. So I am trying to come up with a pattern so that I gradually go from the center of the quilt outside. So right now where I am is I have quilted probably about, I don't know, about 20 or 25 patches. And so I'm going to go ahead and just kind of keep going around. So if we started right here with this block, I would sew this way down and then go to the next row over. And now I'm going back up because these two don't have pins, so they've already been quilted. So I want to go to the next one that does not have, that hasn't been quilted, and this one has pins. Then I'm going to do this one, and then this one, and then, okay, when I get here, I'm going to go around. So you can see each round has less and less bulk. And that's the goal. Of course, I usually start quilting from the center, but this really helps because I want it to get easier the more I do instead of getting harder. So now we can go to the machine and I'll show you how to do one. So we're at the sewing machine right now, and I have my, the feed dogs are still up, I have my embroidery foot on, and I have my quilt already placed where I want it to stitch. Since I'm going to be stitching the entire inside of this block, I'm actually going to start a little bit to the right of one of these lines, because when I get ready to stitch these, the vertical and horizontal seams for the inside of it, I'm gonna overlap some stitches. I left my pins in. I'm gonna take the pins out as I go and after I finish the block. So let's see. Alright, so I'm going to do like one lock stitch, and then I like to stitch a kind of a back stitch in here, and then I'm just going to go for it. And even though I can't really see the ditch, I'm just going to kind of trust it. If it's not perfect, I am not stressed about it. Now to do the next side. And I won't make you watch this whole thing, but I'll let you see what it's like when I get ready to go to the other section. So let me finish this section and then I'll come back on camera. So I'm preparing to cross my first stitches And I'm going to go straight from this edge to start doing the vertical seam. And it's kind of weird right now because I'm pulling the fabric towards me. But again, I'm not looking for perfection, I'm looking for finished. So I'm just doing my best to keep it in the ditch as much as possible. And the main goal with this, the way that I'm choosing to do this, is not to break thread, because it takes too long to restart the thread every time. So each time I'm just trying not to break thread, and so that's why there's a method. This method works for what I want to do. Alright, so I do like a little back stitch here at the end of that line, and then I'm actually just gonna let the thread be in that spot, just leave it out, and then I'm gonna go and do the horizontal. I did the vertical, now I'm gonna do the horizontal. Again with a little back stitch, and then I'm gonna go side to side. Not worrying about if it's perfect, it is probably not going to be. And then just stopping and keeping the needle down so that I can move my hands. And there's a little extra bulk in the center, but because of the machine, it's not an issue. And then just keep going over. Again, it's probably not going to be perfect, but it's just going to be done. Alright, little back stitch. So from this point, I have to start thinking about where the next block is. And the next block happens to be above this block. So what I want to do is think about moving my next stitches. I want to move them up, or my last stitches need to move up. So I'm actually going to go up to this seam, and I'm going to sew down, and then I'll let the thread go over, and then I'll sew up, and that's going to put me in a position to hit the next block. So from here, small back stitch, and I know it's going to look weird with all these threads sticking up, but I'm going to show you how to tuck the threads after I'm done with that. Stop it, needle down. So since I don't want to break the thread, and I want to move the last seam up, so back stitch here, and then the last one is going to move up. And this was going to pose a challenge because it's going to run right into my other thread, but it's just a small challenge. And then as I come to this last stitch, I'm going to run over this thread, but I don't want to, so I'm going to kind of pull it back, and then I'm just going to gently sew to the edge and back stitch. And it doesn't really matter because I can cut that when I get ready to tuck it. Now, in order not to break thread and go to the next one, I'm just going to let this thread, just let it carry, and it actually works well to do that because it's going to leave a bigger tail for hiding. Now I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, I think I'm going to do 4 more, and then I'll come back on camera and show you how to cut the thread. So I have stitched 4 of these blocks in the ditch, and you can see that the threads are still hanging up, and are hanging out, and this is a part of the process. You will have the threads hanging out like this. So right now I'm going to show you how I tuck the threads. First, I want to cut them. And I've already cut all of these. You can see that they're just hanging. Okay, except for that one. And since I backstitch, it really doesn't matter if I cut closer to the corner or closer to the center. I just prefer cutting in the center of these, and you can still, like the longer ones, cutting in the center, and you can still tuck them in easily. This shorter one, I do cut it more on one side. And again, it's not going to matter because I backstitch, so none of the seams will come. They shouldn't come loose. Alright, and I just have a regular hand stitching needle. And all I'm going to do is thread the needle. If you have a magnifying glass, that might help. And then I'm going to pull it so that not all of the thread comes, I don't want the thread to come back out of the needle. Okay, but I'm just gonna choose a point, choose some fabric that it should go under. In this case, I'm gonna choose this fabric, and then I'm gonna push the needle through between the layers and pull it out so that, and then snip it, so that the end of the thread is actually lodged in between the two layers. And I'll do that on all of the other threads for each one of these, and then you also will need to do it on the back as well. So I'm going to get this one finished, and I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. So I just finished the this block, tucking those threads in between the layers of the quilt. I did it on the front or the top of the quilt, and then I've also done it on the back. And as I go through finishing up all of these blocks in the quilt, it's going to be really really interesting. I hope it gives it a lot of texture, and then after I wash it, it'll just crinkle just right. If you have any questions about this technique or about quilting in general, hopefully I can answer those questions for you. Please leave them in the comments below. I am going to do a video about, after I finish this step, about how I put the binding on the quilt as well. So if you, again, if you have questions, leave them below. Like this video, thumbs up, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.